Okay, great. Okay, welcome again, team. Thank you again for taking out your time from your very busy schedule. I do apologize again in advance. I guess I've changed today's meeting session from usually we have it at 12. I moved it to 1. I was a bit worried about daylight savings in New Zealand. So yeah, and I was right. They did have daylight savings. So the reason why I moved it till 1 o'clock. Yeah, and last week, and I apologize as well because we had to switch sessions. We had our USB FNU presentation with Nico and Riteshni this week, but I'm glad, I'm thankful that Dr. Jalal is here to help fill in that gap for our October session, for September session. Yeah, again, our guest speaker today is Dr. Jalal Mohammed. Yeah, so he's a senior lecturer and program lead for the health management program at Auckland University of Fiji. He has held several academic positions at the Fiji School of Medicine and one of the first academics to deliver online courses. He's passionate about improving engagement and student experience in technology enhanced learning. He's the chair for our Pacific Learning and Technology Network. That's, I guess, where we met. And he's been running that successfully. And I guess that particular community of practice was what spawned our small pocket groups as well. And that's what I'm grateful for him. And yeah, and I truly encourage everyone to join this Pacific Online Learning Network because it opens up our network to various other IT specialists in the whole region. Yeah, and yeah, and he's he's passionate about learning technologies, and he fits perfectly with our theme this week. This month, last month it was on multimedia, so it was at Sydney. We had our guest speaker from Sydney University of Technology, and we've just jumped across the pond, across the Tasman to Auckland University of Technology. So I'm glad and I'm thankful Dr. Mohammed has accepted this invitation to be part of today's session. And for, as usual, yeah, I do apologize for the last minute notice as well. Yeah, and yeah, that's him in a nutshell. I think he'll add more into it, and he'll be, his talk today will be on our theme on instructional design and e-learning, since we're coming close to course development period in the end of the year. I think his talk today will be really helpful in ensuring our course design and instructional design concepts and tips to help us for next semester, semester 1, 2020. Yeah, with that, thank you again, Dr. Jalal. I'll pass it on to you.
Thank you, Ralph, and thank you for that wonderful introduction. It's my pleasure to join you guys and share what I've been doing around online learning, in particular designing engaging technology-enhanced learning environments. I'm going to share my screen and hopefully you guys see my screen with all of those little bubbles and the title. Ralph, is that all good?
No, I think the title hasn't popped up yet.
All right, okay. Just give me a second. We did try this out before everyone joined.
Recording in progress.
Oh, sorry about that.
Okay, yep, you can see it now.
All right, okay. So as I was saying, today, you know, I'll have a conversation with you guys around designing and engaging technology-enhanced learning environment. So when we think of learning online, and what we've traditionally been doing is using a learning management system as a repository of information. So you'd kind of have different folders, there'd be a folder for all of your learning resources, say for that week. So it'd be like a folder for lecture slides, a folder for tutorials, a folder for your assessments, which wasn't too engaging, so it was, it was merely a repository of information, but, we're beginning to move away from having it as a repository of information to something that is more engaging. So when I started teaching online, that's what I encountered, a repository. Students weren't too engaged with the resources that I had. So as I began, engaging with the students, I realized that I needed to change the design that I had for them. So over time and with experience, and also, supported by what other people were doing in the field, what they were publishing, I came up with a design that I'll present to you today. But the basis of that design was to minimize the clicks. There was a lot of studies around, and my personal experience as well, in when students had too many clicks, they got lost. They became disengaged with the resources as well. And moving away from, having individual folders from lecture resources to tutorials to assessment, having a more integrated approach, through a week-by-week session. So everything was contained within that week, whether it was lecture resources, tutorial slides, or the assessment. So they knew where to go. This was week one. This is where everything for week one exists online. There was also a lot of studies around how learners respond. And also through my personal experience, I found that they respond to visual elements. So that's what I considered in the design of my courses, to have it more visual in appearance. And I'll show you an example of this. And having a consistent format across those weeks helped in student engagement, but also student retention online. You do find that some students will drop out, and a lot of times when you have conversations with them, they say, they didn't know where the resources were, they didn't know how to do this. So if you have a consistent approach in each of those weeks, a consistent format, it helps in that engagement and retention of that students. And of course, you guys already know this, but it's moving away from that very traditional lecturer-student relationship that existed in face-to-face classrooms to more of a facilitator role that guides the students through that online course. So having a look at all of these things and understanding some of the pedagogies that exist around online learning and teaching, I used 3 to inform the design of my online courses. The first was a scaffolded approach to learning. And this is just building on what the learners know, what is their current level of knowledge, and then designing the elements or the learning artifacts to move them, from their current level of knowledge to the next level, and doing this throughout the course until they understand all of those learning outcomes for the course. Also ensuring that there is constructive alignment. So there should be constructive alignment with what that session is and all of the resources and assessments. What is off-putting for students and learners is having a mismatch between what the title of that week is and the resources and the readings that you've got, or the videos that you're watching, and the activities that you're doing. So ensuring that all of these align, and they align to the learning outcomes of that particular session and of the entire course as well. And the final pedagogical principle that informed the design of my online courses was constructivism. So, I've always thought that learning is collaborative. It's a collaborative process, and knowledge is built through engagement and interaction with others. And I think this fits in very well to how Pacific learners learn as well. It is that interactive, collaborative discussion, sharing of ideas and knowledge process. So I've embedded that into my courses as well. So there is a wonderful little link here about learning theories. So when you are designing courses for your own, designing online courses, or assisting academics with the online courses, you could refer them to this resource. It has a wide list of learning theories. It's visually presented. It's a wonderful little resource that I would highly recommend. So, so the first part of it was just rethinking the design through that engagement and experience with my learners. And then what I did next was I came up with a framework for action. So this framework draws on those 3 pedagogical principles. So scaffolding of learning, constructive alignment, and constructivism. And it helps to create that engaging technology enhanced learning environment. So some of the principles in this framework is that people learn to learn as they learn, that learning is contextual and you need to put it into the context of the industry that they'll be working in, the society that they live in, etc. Learning is personal and people learn differently. So, you go back to those different learning model, VARCs, etc. Some people are visual, some people need to learn by doing, some people need to learn by writing and making notes. So incorporating all of those elements into the design of the learning environment. The teacher's role is a facilitator or an interactive guide. That motivation is key to learning, and I'll discuss how to create some of that motivation online. And that learning is an active process, so have activities in these in your online design that students can do. These could either be self-review activities or peer engagement activities. Have authentic elements as well, authentic assessment, authentic activities that relate to the industries that they will be working in. And that learning is a social activity. So have those discussion forums, have those opportunities for them to engage with each other. So from this framework, this is the guiding framework for my design. I came up with a template to action out this framework. So, and the template, as I said, is a consistent format across those weeks. So the first part of it is just, having a title, having a banner for the week, then moves on to having an introduction. And I'll talk about some of the ways that you could do an introduction, clearly articulating the learning goals for this particular week. And then that relates back to the overall learning goals, the learning outcomes of the course. And this also puts a focus on the learner to engage with resources with this learning goal in mind. And then you'd have a number of resources, and these could vary from readings, recorded resources, supplementary resources. I'll discuss these in more detail as we go through. An engagement session, an activity, and if you have a team project, you can have a section for team tasks as well in this, or take that out, and a recap session to draw together the understandings and learnings from the week, and a review and checklist. So I'll go through I'll go through this template in more detail. So the first part is a banner, and I'm taking examples from my own course. So as I said, keep it, my preference and my experience has taught me to keeping it visual. So the banner introduces the week to the learner. It signals any important dates that the learner needs to be aware of, keeping it very short, 1 or 2 sentences at the most. So you'll see I have a visual element there, which is, welcome to week 1. And it's just a word cloud. There's a date in red there that indicates when this week starts and when it ends. And then just a short little blurb there introducing that particular week. So the banner starts off that particular week. And there's many ways to do this. There's a lot of paid and free tools, and I've put some there. So word art, word it out, word clouds, and Wordles all generate that word cloud that I've shown you in that example, and they're all free tools. You can use other tools such as Prezi or Canva or any image constructing software as well. So if you're good with Adobe, you can use Photoshop as well. So anything that you're really familiar with, and these are things that academics really can do on their own as well. It's not too difficult. All of those word arts, word clouds, they're really simple to do. You just type in what you want and it generates it for you. And then I follow this on with an introduction to the week. And this just signals to the learner what this week is about. And really there's a number of ways to do this. You could have it in a written form. I try and do it in either a video, where it's me talking to the learner, or a voiceover PowerPoint slide or a voiceover presentation slide using any software. And this is just to create that connection with the learner. If they see me, if they hear my voice, there's a connection there which helps to engage them with the resources. So I'll show you an example of this. This is
Kia ora. Welcome to the first week of HEAL 704, Quality Management in the Health Sector. You may have purchased a product or service and thought, oh, this is poor quality. To an ordinary person,
so that's one
quality
of the
is
examples
how
of just
good something is.
doing, having me there and having me talk to the students, introduce the week. It's a very short video. I think it's only about 2 minutes long. The other way that I also do it is through voice.
I'm Jalal Mohammed, and welcome to session 1, the basics of quality management. The aim of this session is for you to develop an understanding of what is meant by quality and examine attributes of quality in relation to the New Zealand health.
So this is just a voiceover Prezi slide. And sometimes I use this because I kind of want to drill in to the students what the aim of this session is, what are some of the tasks that they need to do, and what will a successful completion of this session look like. So there's a couple of options, it really is personal. I like to switch it around. Sometimes I use that video and sometimes I use a voiceover PowerPoint slide to do this. And as I said, there's many ways to do this. I use Prezi quite a bit. It is subscription based, and I think it's about $3 a month for an educational license. But there's a lot of free software as well. I mean, you can use PowerPoint. I think most organizations have access to PowerPoint, and that does a similar job to Prezi as well. Sometimes I get creative and I do animated slides as well, but really it is the academics' preference, I guess, what they feel will engage that cohort of students in that particular course. And then what follows after that is learning goals. And I just do this through a image. So I just articulate to the students what is the learning goals for this particular session and how do they relate to the overall learning outcomes for the course. So our courses have learning outcomes. So there's about 4 or 5 large, broad learning outcomes for the course that we measure student success against. And so each of these sessions, each of these weeks, I just articulate what is the learning goal and then how does that relate to the overall learning outcomes. And it just helps me to focus on constructive alignment. It helps the students to focus on what they'll be reading and reading it with the view of that learning goal and those learning outcomes in mind. It helps me to also scaffold learning as well. So I look at building on some of these learning outcomes as I go along the course. So each of the weeks contributes some way to one or more of these learning outcomes. and it signposts for students what they need to understand as a result of engaging with the resources for that week. And again, you can use any software really to create these visual elements. So you could use, those basic imaging software that are available on Macs or desktops. But you can also use, Prezi, Adobe Creative Cloud, really anything just to do that. You could even do this on Word in that Smart Art feature. And then the next thing after I have with the learning outcomes. So now that they understand what is this session, what is this about, and how does this session contribute to the overall learning outcomes of the course, and what is the learning goal of the session, then they engage with the resources. So I have a number of resources, and these vary from readings. So we have a reading list, and I like to signal in this reading list what is a essential reading and what is a recommended reading. I do recommend that in an online learning environment to keep it quite simple. Choose the best readings. Don't flood the students with too many readings. That is disengaging for the students. Have, one or two good readings that they could look at. One, I try and keep it as one core essential reading for this week, and then some recommended readings, or one recommended reading. So if the students engage with that and they find that they still haven't, understood, I do put other supplementary resources. So these supplementary resources could be, optional readings or videos or links to other resources if they haven't understood. So this, not everyone learns in the same way, and not everyone is able to grasp things, through that one reading. They may require additional resources to grasp all of those concepts that we're talking about in that week. So I do give them additional supplementary resources only if they have not understood that, then they can go to these resources. And then of course, every week I'll have a recorded resource that highlights the key concepts. And this is a short recording, and I generally keep it under 15 minutes. If I can keep it up to 10 minutes, that's even better, because I find students disengage with them if it's too long. So a short, crisp, very clear recorded resource that picks up on some of the key concepts that you want students to understand in that week. And these recorded resources, could be a number of resources. You could be doing videos, you could be doing voiceover presentations, or you could be doing animated videos. I like to do animated videos where I can. They do take a long time to create, but they're quite enjoyable, and the students respond quite well to them. So I mix it up, some animated videos, some voiceover presentations. So I'll give you an example of an animated video.
A number of attributes characterize quality of healthcare services. These are access to services, technical competence, equity, effectiveness, efficiency, continuity of care, safety, patient-centeredness, and amenities. Different groups such as healthcare providers, patients, and insurers.
So that's one of the resources. So I've created that using a resource called Doodly. It is a subscription-based software. I think I paid about probably about $70 for a lifetime license for it. But there are many others as well. And there are some free versions that you could do as well. They do limit it to, like 5 minutes. So if you Google, animated, how to create animated videos, you could come up with some free ones as well. But you could do this, as I said, I mix it around with animated videos or voiceover presentations. So there's a number of software that you could use as well. PowerPoint, Mentimeter is also free software that you could use to create some of this as well. H5P, that is, there's some free elements there as well that you can use, and there's some subscription-based elements, and that's a pretty good software that I'd recommend as well. And then I follow this up. So now that they've had a chance to read and watch the resources, now it's an opportunity for them to engage with me as the facilitator for the course and to engage with their peers in discussing some of the things that they've picked up in those readings, in those recorded resources. So here it's not a lecture, it is an engagement session. So I do this over Zoom, they log in, we have conversations about what they've read. I'll pose questions, we'll have discussions, opportunity for them to engage with each other. We also have breakout rooms where I break them out into smaller groups where they can work on some activities or discussions. If they've got a group project that they do throughout the course, this is also where they would do this as well. So then they come back to me at the end of the session and I kind of round it up for them and also answer any questions that they may have. And of course, you can do engagement resources through a number of software. I use Zoom, it's something that we have here as a university, and you guys probably have that as well. But we also have the option of Microsoft Teams as well. I prefer Zoom because it has that additional feature of breakout rooms where I can't do that on Microsoft Teams. But that engagement session, it helps to further that presence that you have as an academic in that online space, and that motivates students to keep on being engaged and keep on with the tasks. And it also gives them an opportunity to ask any questions that they may have and to get any clarifications rather than, not understanding something and just sitting back, and then when it gets too difficult, they drop out of the course. And then I follow that up with some activities that they can do as well. So I have different type of activity each week. So sometimes it's just self-review activity. So if we've had, I'm covering a lot of that discussion in that engagement session, I might use a self-review activity, which could be, things like a worksheet, a crossword, an online activity, online games, quizzes, or it could be a peer engagement activity, such as a discussion board, a discussion forum, etc. So there's a number of ways to create activities. This is just a simple activity that I had in my course. It's just a worksheet in the very beginning of the course. And I've just designed this graphically and then attached the worksheet to it. But you can also have quizzes. Moodle has built-in quiz features, so you can do a self-review quiz as well through the LMS. But you can also integrate lots of other activities as well. Sometimes I like to create crosswords for the students, so they fill in crosswords. There's word search puzzles. You can use Kahoot as something that could have quizzes and games throughout the course. So it kind of gamifies learning and it creates that little bit of that competitive element as well. So, students try and beat each other's scores, keeps them motivated, keeps them engaged. But you can also create quizzes, through other free software as well, such as Socrative, Formative, and, there's also other activities such as when I'm on Zoom, I integrate concept mapping, whiteboards, post-it notes, when we're having discussions, so they, can write on these whiteboards, they can create these post-it notes and put them up. Some of the ones that I would recommend is Mural, and Mural has a free ED education license. So if you sign up for it and then as an academic, you write to them, say that you're an academic with this university, they will give you a free license to that as well. Another good one is Lucid Spark. There's a free and paid version of that, but that does post-it notes very well, and that integrates that into Zoom and Microsoft Teams as well. But there's also, other ones that are free, such as Creately, Miro. Miro is quite good as well, Allboard, etc. So there's a number of tools that are available to academics and for you guys as instructional designers to recommend to academics, you know, so play around with some of these tools. They're quite fun, I've got to say. The students like that engagement element where they can write on that whiteboard, they can create those post-it notes and have those ideas and brainstorm activities. So it works quite well in terms of online learning. Some of the courses that I run have team tasks, and so I have in that template a team task. And these are largely authentic assessments. So we create these assessments in our clinic, and the students go into the clinic. So it is really a blended course. Most of the elements are online. It's just the practical components in the clinic where they design some sort of tool for the clinic is done within the clinic. So they do a lot of that back-end work before they're going to the clinic online through their team task as well. So you can carry out team tasks as well online. It does work. A lot of the students, you know, create their own Zoom meetings, have those conversations outside of that class time that we have with them to keep that team task going. And then at the end of it, I recap. So now that the students have gone through their readings, they've had an opportunity to engage with me with that Zoom session. They've done the activities. It's important as the facilitator to kind of thread some of those discussions, to weave it together so the students are able to make sense of all of that discussion, all of the activities that they've done. And I do this just through a short 5-minute recap session where I kind of put together those important discussions that were had during that engagement session, the important concepts that they should have picked up on through those readings and those activities. And I just do this simply through a voiceover presentation. And this is just...
Before you move on to the next session, let's recap on the basic concepts of healthcare quality.
So this is just a PowerPoint slide, and I've just done a voiceover for that. It's very simple, but very effective. It brings together all of those discussions that the students have had. And, you know, you can do that either through PowerPoint, Prezi, or any really software. And then I have a review and checklist. Now, ideally, what I would like for this checklist is for it to be an actual checklist where they can tick off. Our learning management system currently doesn't support that feature. I think Moodle does, and I know Canvas does. So we can actually have a checklist where they, once they've completed it, they can come in, click on it, and it ticks as complete. In lieu of not having that feature, I've created something visual, so you can always have this visual, but do check out the features of Moodle, because I think Moodle does allow you to generate checklists. This is an example of a course, but I've just gone through most of those and within that template discussions that we've had. So now that you've got this framework and then you've kind of put together your course, that's not the end of it, you know, because without the course on its own is not engaging, you know, there are engaging elements to it, but it needs that human element to bring it together. So you need to engage learners, and, you know, to ensure that you are going to engage learners, ensure that the workload is realistic. So ensure that they are able to complete it. I've seen online courses that have, you know, 5 or 6 readings in that week, you know, and they're long readings, you know, they're 20 pages or more each. Then there's, you know, a couple of activities that they have to do. So think about the student, think about the other courses that they have to do as part of their program. They may also be working, they have family commitments. So think about what is a realistic workload, because that's going to help in engagement and retention of students. Ensure that there is intrinsic motivation. So you can do this through having real world tasks, active engagement, authentic assessments, pace learning. So build, again, go back to that scaffolding of learning, build on what they know in each of those weeks. Give feedback throughout the course. It's important to receive feedback from a learner's perspective. If they don't receive feedback in a timely manner, then they become disengaged as well. Have clear and good guidelines for all of your activities and assessments. Nothing is worse for a learner than something that's confusing and they don't know what to do or what is the scope of this activity or this assessment, and they become confused and disengaged. Ensure that there is constructive alignment between all of those elements. And when the learner sees the constructive alignment, they see how it's all linked. They can see the value of what they're doing in relation to what they need to learn for that week. So that helps them to be engaged as well. Create an online presence. And you can do that through having weekly announcements. So I make sure that every Monday, you know, at 8 a.m., there's an announcement that is going out to the student, introducing the week and what they need to do. And you could really, you know, with all of these learning management systems, you can schedule these in advance. You can create these and set them up so they go out automatically in each week. And that's what I do for the whole semester. Have those introductory videos to ensure that there is your presence online, that the students know that there is a human behind all of those words and videos and, you know, the screen that they're looking at, someone that they can engage with, talk with, have their doubts clarified, someone that will guide them throughout that online course. Have a number of formative activities to ensure that they are able to receive feedback for their learning, to develop their understanding. So all of those activities that I have are largely formative, and then the assessments are summative in nature. Give timely feedback and ensure that there is good and clear communication to students. And when you're designing an online course, ensure that it is accessible. So think about accessibility as well. So have a universal design, so a consistent format across those weeks. Use a number of different activities and resources. Use diagrams and pictures, have videos, have opportunities for students to engage with each other. Just a reminder, if you're having diagrams and pictures, fill out the alt text. A number of times I know academics just ignore that element of it, but for someone who's using a visual reader who is visually impaired, alt text helps significantly. It reads out the text for, or the description of that picture for them. As I said, have multiple formats to accommodate the different types of learners. I found that videos offer flexibility because the students can watch them, re-watch them, rather than having live lectures. So try and have videos where possible, and consider the access for visually impaired people or students or learners with other learning disabilities. So it shouldn't be really an afterthought is what I'm saying, but you should, whenever you're designing a course, design it in a way that it just is inclusive for all learners. And some other tools to engage learners, you know, have the gamify it, you know, that helps quite a bit in my experience. Have polls, have virtual tours where, you know, say if you were, and this has helped quite a bit for me in lockdowns and during COVID times. We've normally take our students into the clinic, and the first day we get them to, you know, give them a tour around the clinic, and we haven't been able to do that in lockdown. So I've created virtual tours, and this is quite easy to do. SeekBeak is a good software to do this, and it will create a virtual tour from photos or videos. I have lots of whiteboards in it to engage students. For students that are hearing impaired, you can have subtitles to your videos as well, and there's a number of software that will create those subtitles for you as well. Sorry, and if you're using images, I've just sites that have a lot of images. Unsplash is really good. It has thousands of free images that you can be using. And then there's also some free music sites where you can bring together, you know, some music into your presentations or etc. Filmstro is quite a fun little tool. You can type in a sentence and it will pick out that sentence from different movies and put them together, so you can have a collage of different movies saying that sentence for you. So some of these are quite interesting and some of these are quite fun as well for the students and the learners to engage with. What I also recommend is having surveys. I know a lot of universities do end of course surveys, but that isn't useful for the current cohort of students. As an academic, that helps you to make changes for the next cohort. But what about this cohort? So what I like to do is have a couple of surveys, you know, during the course. It's very short. And it informs me on my teaching practice and what I need to change, because every cohort or student is different. So having these surveys throughout is a good way of me getting that information around what changes do I need to make to my teaching practice to suit this cohort, or what else would they like to see in this course? What else could I add? What's working well, what isn't? So I get all of those information from these surveys. You can also use barcode generators to link resources. So you can have these instead of, you know, if you're hosting, you know, say a video on YouTube instead of your LMS and you want the students to link to it, you could actually create a barcode that links to it. And one of the free ones is Linktree. I use this for my professional networks to link people in, and it works quite well. There is also a Moodle manual. So when I was at the Fiji School of Medicine, and I think this would be probably around 2014, I wrote this teaching online using Moodle manual, and I think Sanya would have a copy of it. It is a little bit outdated, so it is, you know, getting to a decade old now, and it just has a template that was used for Moodle. This is a template I designed, and it was used widely across the College of Medicine in their Moodle courses. I would recommend a lot of changes to that. If I rewrote that manual, I'd love to rewrite that and come and incorporate all of this new understanding and learning that I have. But that is a good starting point as well. It just offered a consistent design across those weeks. But you can also always go back to what I've presented and incorporate some of that. So that was my presentation. Any questions or comments?